Okay, happy Friday. This is a video for the Canpur CP74E. The 7 would be the balanced armature and the 4 would be EST for a total count of 11 drivers. If you are a subscriber to this channel, a commenter from below who has the little subscriber icon next to it in the studio is going to have this sent to them. There is an unboxing video also that you would have to be commented under and also subscribe there. It's an older video. This is one that's being pulled over because it was going to be given away and then it wasn't. All the sets that have been won up to the 2 sign sets, the EM10 and LM from ages ago that got caught up in spam and a bunch of stuff. Thank you to that dude for his patience. Everybody else has been served, so thank you guys. Everybody gets their stuff. Back to this set. This is a sub to the flagship, which is the 3500, a little bit more than that. I think the CP622B that I have in its regular form and also in the CIM. I paid for both of those and I got a little discount on the universal. I got nothing consideration wise on the custom. I'm fine with that, so I invested a lot of money in that set. This is slotted in to be a set that it is just under that by about $1,000. It's got one extra driver, but it doesn't have the BCD drivers, which I think gives the set that I love a lot of its magic. So looking at it on a graph, it's got a little bit more bass, or a little bit less bass, but it's got a little bit more extension. It is it's a neutral warm set. There's not a lot of deviation. It's a 10 dB box across the board from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. It doesn't have any big spikes or big bumps really anywhere in the tuning. It is a set that I would call vocal centric, and that kind of tips it up. And I will compare it with the 622B at the end. The bass, the triple drop big boy kill gel with its force and its power is not quite on par. It's actually not really close to the 622B. There's a lot going on with that set. A lot of people say I don't get what he's talking about, and then there's other people that are library like mine or listen to Raw with Lil Wayne and Rick Ross and have that drop, and they know what that is and they can feel it vibrating in their ear. So talking to those people, this set doesn't have that force and power in the drop. It sounds good and comparable to other sets that have similar tuning and drivers, a little bit more bass. I noticed that the Spartacus by Noble I think has the same BAs and the bass as this does, and the same ones that the CP622B does, which is very good for BAs, and we're at a point where distinguishing them from DDs is a lot harder, and that's a really good thing. But this, because of its a little bit less in scale compared to the Canpur that does have the BCDs, which to my ear is doing stuff in the mid bass and the mids. Other people say mids and upper mids because of white papers. My library doesn't play that back. It's a very engaging in the mid bass and also in the mids. This is more of a typical well-tuned set with high quality drivers. As we get into the 4 and 5 string bass guitar, the pulls, the plucks, the releases, the vibrating, the ringing of the strings, this sounds actually superb. This sounds excellent. If I didn't know what was in it, I would suppose that it has very good drivers in it. I do know what is inside it, so there's a little bit of placebo going on there, but it sounds excellent. Plays back that instrument fantastic. As we get into Bonham's kick drum, very forceful entrance, boom, sh, boom, 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 sh. It sounds comparable to a set, and I'm going to name this set because you might be very familiar with it. It's called the 6480 U12T. The amount of energy that set gives to Bonham's kick drum is not very different from what this does. Even though I think that the BAs inside this are much more modern and are a better quality, the amount of force that's coming through is probably similar to that. That's the best analog, like a thing that's similar that I can come up with that a lot of people are familiar with. It's not a bassy set, but it's warm, and it's got the warmth can be its up and down point depending on how you like that set. This has a warmth level and force in the kick drum similar to the U12T. As we move into the vocals, Chris Cornell, Lane Staley, Blondie doing the cover of, or Nina doing the cover of Blondie. I think this is, like I said at the beginning, a vocal centric set. It doesn't have a lot of mid bass, and it doesn't have an abrupt or enormous ear gain, so it's not really doing a lot to the vocals except just enough to make them sound natural without really pushing them forward or warming them up too much. So if you really like vocals, I think that this sounds great with classic music. I think it sounds great with some classic rock, especially stuff like Neil Young, and stuff that's more Spartan and simple in its production. So I think this does vocals excellent. As a matter of fact, I think that's where this shines. Again, a classic rock library, classic music does very good on this. So vocals are good, and I think it's probably what this does best. As we move into the upper mids and treble, which is really exclusively pretty much harmonics and overtones, we're talking about cymbal strikes, we're talking about pianos, we're talking about keyboards, we're talking about guitars, electric and acoustic, with distortion pedals and without. I think this does good. The graph would indicate a little bit more energy after 8K, and that might show itself at the point I'm talking about right now, which is overtones and harmonics. I am unable to give a cite. I can't cite a certain track where, oh, that's where I can pick that up. There's none of that. Some people said that the 622B could use a little more energy. I didn't think so. And when I line these up to 77 dB output on multiple devices and I listen at the same volume, because I'm adjusting them to put out at the same, at 450 hertz, which is a relatively flat point on a lot of sets, or you would hope it would be. So line it up there and then adjust for 77 dB and then listen to it. Listen to the same things. I'm unable to say to you that I think that this sounds like it's got a little bit more energy. The graph says it does, and your ears might pick it up, but I don't. It looks like it does on a graph, but it doesn't really sound that way. So in summary, before I put it up on a ranking, it sounds a lot like a CP622B. It's not lacking in the area where you most think it does because of the graph, which would be the 8 and beyond. It's actually probably 50 hertz to 500 hertz is where the hugest difference is, where the 622 has a engaging, very lively, over-the-top presentation sometimes of some low-end instruments that have a lot of energy. This is a much more polite and traditional type tuning. Excellent in its res, but it's not exploding on you with the drop on the Lil Wayne Rick Ross track called Raw, R-A-H. You can check that out. This doesn't really do that. Putting it up on a scale, dumpster fire? No. Hope it was free? Not for me. This is a set that was sent by Music Tech, and I got to send it back when I'm done. But that's related to the ranking. Coping is working. I felt like this isn't doing quite what 622B is in certain moments. With the best way to describe it is reverb and decay. Though those probably aren't the best terms to use. Those are what come to my mind first. It sounds like there's a little more life. It's just, we're talking about milliseconds to really everything with low energy force that doesn't exist with this set. This sounds more typical to a lot of other sets that I've got. But that set's the one that I fell in love with and hyped, and then I went and got a CIM, which I never do anymore. So that's kind of that's an unfair comparison, but this is literally the same company, its little brother. So I did do a little bit of coping. Competes with its peers at the $2,700, I believe, which is what this is. I think it's probably the best, actually. There's bias there, right there. Because I'm a fan of Canpur, because I like to know what the drivers are, and I don't want to be battling with someone in China saying it doesn't matter, it's not a Belzing, we had these custom made, and then they don't end up saying what it is because they're defensive, because they don't want to talk about it. This company's telling you right up front every single driver, and you can go check it out on the internet and figure out where those drivers are supposed to be and what they should be doing, how much dampening is being applied to get it to where it is in this current tuning. You can do all the info and checking you want, which is something that I love. And also the QAs and QCs with Sony as a company are exceptional, if not the best in the business. So it competes with its peers, if not being better. I'd buy it. This is where the whole thing that it was sent by Andrew at Music Tech, but I'm going to buy a set myself because this has to go back probably Monday. I'm going to ship it back. And then I'm going to go ahead and buy a set because I think he's got it in stock. So I'm going to rank this as I'd buy it. And the clear difference being, I'm going to put this in a Money Trees video, and it's going to be compared to some other sets like the Grand Maestro and the Storm. So get out of just the Canpur umbrella. I'll do that in the future. Shamelessly hyping is what I did with the 622B. And that was sticking it in multiple videos, talking about it all the time because I genuinely love it. So the difference between these two is right there. I like the 74E. I think it's excellent. I think it's worth its value related to other options in its price range, which we can talk about more. You can ask me in the comment section. But it's not the flagship, and if it were, I think I'd be kind of bummed and this would be a negative video because I put a lot of money into the 622B. But I have come up and done videos where I said, I don't think that the flagship is really the best one of it. So I've said that several times, and people always, companies hate that stuff. Wow. I'm looking at you, Dunu. That was way back to the DK 4001, 3001, 2001. I said the 3001 sounds better than the other two, even though it's the middle one. That was the last communication we're doing. Companies don't like that kind of stuff. Thankfully, in this situation, the 622B is legit the flagship, and it sounds like it is supposed to be. And the 74E didn't come up and usurp it. It's supposed to be the just under that if you can't afford it but still want to get a good set. So I would recommend it. I'm buying it myself. That's the recommendation. But I was coping during the review because I was kind of adjusting to life without those bone conduction drivers. And it was easy to do, but there was that moment. So I went from coping to I'd buy it because it does probably slay most of its competition in its price range. And again, for its price, if you want to put some alternatives down below and ask me to compare, because I didn't mention this video, but I will in a future one, go ahead and suggest, because that content might appear in a future video. So thank you guys very much. Enjoy your weekend. That's it for me. Thank you to Andrew for the loaner, and I'll be talking to you about buying one. Also, don't forget about the Hype 4 and the people who, and there's 4 of them that haven't received their sets yet. No supporter left behind. I'm naming you multiple times in the video so you don't feel like I'm just moving along and where are you? I got you. I got you. Enjoy your weekend with your family. And I'm out.